Okay, so welcome back. Today we're gonna be talking about the serial killer John Wayne Gacy. And then just to introduce the people who worked on this project, my name is Sebastian. You'll be seeing Bree Styler, Eric Molina, and then Jadira Hernandez. So just a little bit about John Wayne Gacy. He was an American serial killer, also known as he was also known to be a sex offender, born in 1942 in the city of Chicago, Illinois. On the outside, he appeared to be a hardworking businessman and a community member who entertained children as Pongo the Clown or Pogo the Clown. But beneath his friendly image, he lived a life of horrifying violence. Between 1972 and 1978, he murdered at least 33 teenage boys and young men, burying many of their bodies in the crawl space beneath his home. His arrest in 1978 revealed the shocking extent of his crimes, making him one of the most infamous killers in U.S. history. Convicted of all charges, Gacy was eventually executed by lethal injection back in 1994, leaving behind a dark legacy that continues to disturb and fascinate the public today. And then on the top, you can see a little bit about John Wayne Gacy. One of the pictures is when he was incarcerated, and then the other picture shows what he looked when he was the clown, Bogo the Clown. Okay. And then in this slide, we can see a little bit about underneath his house where they found some of the bodies. The picture on the corner shows them bringing out some of the bodies that were found in there. And then in the middle, you can see one of his victims. His name was Jeffrey Ricknall, who was face burnt by chloroform. And on the other side, you can see a little bit more about his victims.
So I'm going to be talking about his family life. So Gacy was born on March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. Gacy grew up in a working class neighborhood on Chicago's southwest side. His father, John Stanley Gacy, was an auto repair mechanist and a World War One veteran known for his violent temper and alcoholism. His mother, Marion, was a homemaker described as gentle and protective of her children, especially John, whom she often defended from his father's abuse. Early life of John Wayne Gacy. In Gacy's early life, he suffered from a con congenital heart condition, which would cause him to occasionally black out, preventing him from participating in sports or physically demanding activities. At age 11, he was struck in the head by a swing, causing a blood clot that went untreated for years. This led to further periodic blackouts until doctors discovered it when he was 16. These issues, combined with his father's ridicule, led to feelings of inferiority and isolation. Gacy worked part-time jobs while attending Catholic school. He tried to win his father's approval through hard work and obedience, but was consistently rejected or belittled. Married his first wife, Marilyn, in September 1964. He had two kids, Michael and Christine. Later, he was charged with sodomy in 1967 when Marilyn would later divorce him and take their two kids. Later in 1971, he married Carol Hoff, who also had two little girls and was also divorced. His home with Carol soon soured as she was well aware of Gacy's homosexual activities and divorced him in 1976. What and why did it happen? He said that he found his first victim in 1972, was found at a Greyhound bus station, and was later convinced to go home with him. They both had oral sex. Later, he says he had been wrestling with the boy and says he had stabbed him a couple of times in self-defense. During this period of time, there was a large culture of drugs, runaways, and homophobia. So when a young boy went missing, he was often summoned up as a runaway. Even less resources were given to him if they were thought to be as gay. We can see from on Gacy's victims. Jeffrey Rignaw, a legacy survivor, had been violated by him, and his face was burned with chloroform. After surviving his experience, he turned to the police to report the rape, but took the matter very lightly due to it being two homosexuals. At the time, a man being the victim was hard to understand during this time. Rignaw investigated and reported on Gacy in March 1978, and he was arrested for battery, but the case was never resolved, and Gacy was left free. Gacy would pick up generally young, clean-cut, virile-looking men, in other words, innocent-looking boys. He often lured in the boys with drugs or a job and saw that due to this transaction, he viewed too as his right to break them because he paid for them. He says he didn't stop simply because he kept getting away with the crime. Didn't it, how was he caught? What evidence was found? Robert Peace's investigation began on December 12, 1978. He disappeared after a shift at work after speaking with Gacy about a potential job. After not returning home that night, which was his mother's birthday, the family reported him missing due to him being from a stable home and being well liked within his community. He was not considered a runaway like many others.
How did it happen? Everybody from Mother's neighbors in the northwest suburbs of Chicago knew Gacy as he was seen as an important figure within the community. He had a construction business called Painting, Decorating, and Maintenance, which is why he initially went to the pharmacy as he was trying to get a job for the estimate. That same drugstore he was trying to get an estimate in was where he initially met Robert Peace. After Peace never came home, Gacy's background was checked among the others within the store by the police, and as he was also the last one to be seen talking to him, he was initially seen as the first suspect, and with his previous charge of sodomy from his records in Iowa. They were able to receive their first warrant due to a criminal history, but did not find Peace within his home, only the objects of other people and trophies from his previous victims. Unbeknownst to law enforcement, Gacy had already dumped Peace's body in the Des Plaines River after strangling him to death the same day he went missing. Had also found a receipt that had put Gacy in the same area of Peace as the receipt was initially put in Peace's coat before he left by a coworker. Without Peace or any evidence, all the police could do was hope Peace was alive and continue to tail Gacy throughout his daily life. Gacy, being the kind of power-hungry man he was, tried to continue to take control of the situation, making it seem like law enforcement was there to protect him and not tailing him. He even tried to be friendly with the law enforcement, offering them food and other things. This got to the point where he even invited the officers into his home as a friendly gesture, which officers used as a chance to go once again search his house under the guise of going for other things like going to the bathroom. During this time, one of the detectives had smelled human remains that he said came from his experience with the line of work, offering even more probable cause. With this probable cause from the smell of the dead bodies and the receipt found on Gacy in the initial search, they were able to gain a second warrant for the home. This time, they tried searching within the crawl space, which was emitting the human remains smell. Which, after finding their first body, it led to Gacy confessing his crimes, and they continued looking for more and more bodies within the home, mainly in the crawl space. They found that many of the bodies had been tortured. 29 of them were found within his home, either within the crawl space, garage, and driveway. After a while, another four were found dumped in the rivers, as Gacy said he had no more space within his home. While awaiting trial, Gacy was interviewed from November 1979 to April 1980 by a member of his legal team with over 60 hours of his conversations recorded, which is how we got many of the testimonies of his crimes. In total, 33 bodies were found within his home. 5 of them continue to be left unidentified. Gacy was found guilty in less than 2 hours as he tried to plead guilty with insanity but did not work due to the premeditation of his kills and his ability to hide them for so many years. He had no remorse even as he continued to claim his innocence, saying that he didn't kill anybody while he was still in jail. He lived on appeals for another 15 years trying to fight his death sentence, but still died to lethal injection in 1994. I hate public speaking.
So what was the motive? From what we can gather from the investigation and the conversations with Gacy himself, his motive was one of sexual arousal and the need to feel powerful. Due to the constant abuse from his father, who was constantly calling Gacy a weak, dumb, and stupid kid who couldn't do anything because of this, he craved power and control. He stated, "I am a powerful person. I enjoy power." He is consistently looking for any way to gain it. Then, looking into the struggles of his sexual urges towards homosexuals that came out in his personality as anger and rage. Once he found that ability to have the power in the form of holding someone's life in his hands, he found something he truly enjoyed. He was able to lay out his sexual urges and his need for power in one swoop, while also being able to hide his crimes through disposing of the bodies. Some of the internal factors that led to the execution of Gacy's crimes are his troubled mental health, poor self-image, and his severe internalized homophobia. These coincide with the external factors of parental abuse in his childhood. Already questioning his masculinity because of his short stature and large build, Gacy described his upbringing as riddled with feelings of isolation and a lack of belonging. Gacy explained later in life that he was bisexual as a means to cover his identity as a gay man. He went so far as to describe homosexual men as sick and weak. External factors that could have influenced Gacy's mental state and eventual murderous acts were the abuse he endured at the hands of his father in early childhood and the societal normalization of homophobia. Often ridiculed by his father, who was a drunk, Gacy could have developed severe mental disorders as a result of physical and mental abuse. Additionally, Gacy was born and raised in a very homophobic time. That forced him to hide his sexual desires and even caused it to bring negative emotions towards himself.
In Rockford, Illinois today, jury selection begins for a mass murder trial that will actually be conducted in Chicago. It's been more than a year since the murders were discovered, but Chris Kelly reports emotion in the case remains high.
You might be witnessing one of the most horrible crimes, perhaps, in a century.
It was a grisly scene. Day after day, the bodies of boys and young men being taken out of the home of John Wayne Gacy. 29 decomposed corpses were found under the house and surrounding grounds. 4 other bodies were discovered in a river several miles away. In all, Gacy is charged with 33 murders over a 7-year period. More than a year later, 11 victims remain unidentified. Authorities claim the 37-year-old building contractor used job offers and sometimes strong-arm methods to bring his young male victims to his home for intended homosexual activities. Most were killed, a few escaped.
Definitely threatened me with that he had guns in the house, and that if he had to, if I went to the police or told anyone about his advances upon me, that I would be endangered with that, and that he wanted me to realize how easy it would have been for him to kill me right then and there.
Police searched the home for several months looking for other victims. The house was so badly dismantled that it had to be torn down. Gacy has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. During 3 of his pretrial court appearances, he collapsed and was hospitalized for apparent heart problems. But doctors have been unable to find any health problems serious enough to prevent him from standing trial. Among those the defense would like to call as potential witnesses is Rosalind Carter, who posed with Gacy for this 1976 photograph. At the time, Gacy was a Democratic volunteer campaign worker. Because of the enormous publicity generated by the case, the jury will be selected in Rockford, 90 miles away from Chicago. The city was picked because a study showed that of 5 potential sites, people here had been subjected to the least number of news accounts of the case.
I think Rockford is a good common sense community. People don't have a tendency to run in a pack in Rockford. I think most of the people here are independent enough to form their own opinions. And I think that probably a sense of fairness pervades that kind of thinking.
The selection of the jury here in this Rockford courtroom and the subsequent trial itself in Chicago represent an unprecedented legal procedure in Illinois. The hope is that this, along with sequestering the jury, will assure Gacy a fair trial. Chris Kelly, CBS News, Rockford, Illinois.
Prison authorities in Illinois are preparing to execute one of America's most notorious serial killers. John Wayne Gacy is scheduled to die by lethal injection early Tuesday morning after a legal battle that has gone on for years. More now from Frank Courier.
It was 1978 when the world first saw the horrifying images of body bags being pulled from John Wayne Gacy's house near Chicago, and of Gacy, later convicted in the torture murders of 33 young men and boys and condemned to die.
Nothing is going to stop this execution from happening. It's gotta happen.
After 14 years on death row in an Illinois prison fighting to overturn his sentence, Gacy's time is running out. His lawyers are scrambling to block Tuesday's scheduled execution.
Mr. Gacy is unfortunately the person that everybody holds up to support the idea that capital punishment is right and that it works and that it's just.
But prosecutors say he's exhausted his options.
I don't want to see any last-minute delays. The case has been pending for 14 years. His lawyers had an obligation sometime in the last 14 years to bring up whatever they're trying to bring up today.
Most Chicagoans agree and are fed up with paying millions of tax dollars to keep a confessed serial killer alive.
We wasted enough money on him already.
He just doesn't have a purpose on this planet.
Not surprisingly, even activists admit that Gacy may be the perfect argument for capital punishment, but they want to keep him alive, saying that any execution sends out the wrong message.
The unavoidable truth is that the death penalty makes premeditated killers of us all. We become the very thing that we condemn.
Still, for the victims' families, it'll be justice served when, barring any last-minute reprieve, Gacy dies by lethal injection in a small execution chamber at Stateville Penitentiary. Frank Courier, CBS News, Joliet, Illinois.